Hi, this is your host, and you're watching this channel. Today's big question. Do you know that Viking helmets never actually had horns? That famous image of fierce Vikings wearing horned helmets is a myth one created not by Vikings themselves, but by artists in the 1800s. The Vikings were Scandinavian seafarers from around 793 to 1066 AD, known for their raids, trade, and exploration. They sailed across Europe, reached Iceland, Greenland, and even North America, and became legendary for their courage and skill. But when it came to helmets, the reality was much simpler. Archaeologists have found Viking helmets made of iron ore, leather rounded, or conical in shape, designed for battle protection. And guess what? Not a single authentic Viking helmet has horns. So why do we picture Vikings with horns? To answer that, we have to travel back to the 1800s. Back then, European artists and writers wanted to make Viking culture seem more dramatic, more wild, more romantic. And what better way to do that than with horns? In 1876, the costume designer for Richard Wagner's famous opera, Der Ring des Nibelungen, added horned helmets to the Viking costumes. It looked epic on stage and the image stuck. From then on, paintings, plays, and eventually Hollywood movies spread the horned Viking look everywhere. But why did Wagner include horns in his play? Well, he wasn't the first to add them. In the 1700s, French writer Voltaire described Vikings as having horned helmets. But where did Voltaire get that idea? We don't know for sure. Maybe he, like Wagner, just wanted to make Vikings seem more dramatic. Maybe he saw a real Viking helmet with horns somewhere. But we have no proof of that either. What we do know is that there are no historical records of Vikings wearing horned helmets. The only horned helmets archaeologists have found are from other cultures, like the Celts and the Germanic people. The Celts were a group of tribes in Europe from around 600 BC to 400 AD. They were known for their art, which often featured animals and mythical creatures like snakes, wolves, and horses. These creatures were sometimes shown with horns. When the Germanic people took over Celtic lands, they adopted some of the Celtic art, including the horned helmet, but that doesn't mean Vikings wore them. Most of the horned helmets archaeologists have found are from England and France, not Scandinavia. And there's no evidence that Vikings took part in these battles. Remember, Vikings were Scandinavian, from places like Denmark, Norway, and Sweden. So while horned helmets might have been popular in other places, we have no evidence that Vikings wore them. Still, the myth stuck. And in the 1800s, it took on a life of its own. As I said before, the image of the horned Viking was perfect for romantic poets and opera companies. It made Vikings seem mysterious, wild, and exciting. And once the image was out there, it was hard to change. I mean, have you ever seen a Viking without horns? If Vikings didn't have horns, how could we ever change that? But here's the thing, real Viking helmets were probably pretty scary without horns. They were made of iron or leather, often covered with cloth or mail. They were rounded or conical in shape, which may sound simple, but were actually pretty advanced. You see, a round helmet could protect a Viking's head from blows and slashes. It could deflect arrows and take the edge off a sword or axe attack. Conical helmets were good, too, especially for mounted fighters. They were lighter and more flexible than iron helmets, and let the wearer see better. Plus, both types of helmets could be customized. Some had a nose guard or a chin strap, others were reinforced with metal. And that brings us to our next big question. Why aren't there any real Viking helmets with horns? Well, adding horns wouldn't make a helmet more protective. In fact, it would make it worse. Horns are dangerous. Just ask anyone who's been head-butted by a goat. Now imagine charging into battle with a helmet full of sharp, pointy horns. Sure, you'd look awesome, but if you got hit, those horns would slice up your face, neck, and chest. Yikes! Not to mention that a helmet with horns would be really heavy. And we know Vikings liked their helmets to be lightweight, especially if they were going into battle on horseback. A heavy helmet would throw off a fighter's balance, making it hard to move and strike effectively. Plus, horns would be awkward to fight with. Imagine swinging an axe with one hand while holding onto your horned helmet with the other. Not exactly a winning strategy. So while horned helmets look cool, they weren't practical. In fact, the only people who wore them were those who didn't need to fight. Think about it. If you were a Viking warrior, would you wear a helmet with sharp metal horns that would rip up your face if you got hit? Or would you wear a simple, unadorned helmet that kept you safe without weighing you down or hurting yourself? Of course, a warrior would choose the second option. After all, Vikings were practical people. They built ships that could cross oceans. They developed advanced legal and political systems. They traded with people across Europe and even North America. They were known for their skill in battle, their courage, and their ability to work together. In short, they were a sophisticated, capable people. And that's why it's so fascinating to learn about them. And that's why I'm so excited to share this new series with you. It's called Vikings, and it's all about the fascinating world of these legendary explorers and warriors. From their daily life to their epic voyages and battles, you'll discover what made the Vikings one of the most legendary cultures in history. Don't miss this epic journey.